Hello and welcome back to the Field Coach Experts podcast, where franchisors, field coaches, and operations leaders come to learn how to drive franchisee performance without creating confusion, resistance, or burnout. I am your host, Jennifer Brannon, Chief Growth Officer at AC Inc. And today we're diving into a topic that every franchise system should be utilizing, but often aren't, and that's scorecards. So to help me unpack this, I'm joined with someone who works with franchisees and coaches and franchisors, and they really dig into this challenge every day, and he's our scorecard guy. So of course I was going to bring him on to the podcast today, and that is Brecken Gage, our Director of Advising here at AC Inc. So welcome, Brecken. I'm glad to have you as my guest again.
Thanks for having me back, JB. Always happy to be here.
So, Brecken, let's, you've been on before and people have heard your background as a former franchisee, and you worked for your franchisor. Our stories are very, very similar. But let's talk a little bit about what you are doing right now with clients that come into AC Inc. as the Director of Advising.
Oh, okay. So my role at AC Inc. actually, it's really fun. I get to make sure that clients are satisfied with their, the services that we're providing at AC Inc. I'm really there though to ensure that there's alignment between what we said we're going to do and what they think is going to happen, making sure that goals are being achieved and measured, and that we're all rowing in the same direction. So I'm often the point of contact for the franchisor, as well as for the advisors. So I meet with the advisors every week. We review what's going on with their clients, what their strategy is, where they want to take their engagements, and what steps are coming next. So always strategy, essentially, for both the franchisor and the advisors. It's really fun, actually. It's a good job.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you like your job here at AC Inc.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's jump into scorecards, and I say that you're our scorecard guy, and it really is true. Even our internal meetings, you often are really all about the scorecard and making sure that we have or are constantly working on improving our scorecard as a measure of performance. So, but when we think about scorecards when it comes to franchisees, often we hear this a lot before we kind of really go into what they are and what they kind of should look like. Why do you think that many franchisees, when we talk about scorecards, which is numbers based really, why do you think it can be overwhelming, or even franchisees might be like, no, thank you. I don't want anything to do with that. Because a lot of times they're really, or all the time, I guess, they're really focused on KPIs, data, that kind of thing. So why do you think that is?
So I think there's a variety of potential reasons, and it depends on the system and the franchisee. But the most common ones I certainly see and our team sees are, one, they just feel overwhelmed by there's too many numbers being thrown at them. So here's your scorecard, let's look at your P&L, let's look at a side-by-side, whatever it is. There's just too many numbers that are constantly being thrown at them. So that's one. Two, they don't understand why scorecards are helpful. So if they don't understand the why, they're like, this is just another make work project for me, and it's a pain. Okay, so without understanding the why, that becomes a big issue. Often they're just given scorecards and told, these are your numbers. I want you to fill this out. And so they're told to do it, and it just there's a natural kind of don't tell me what to do reaction from some of our franchisees. So they're not bought in because they're being told what to do. And honestly, a lot of them just don't understand the scorecard. So they don't understand the why, and then they don't understand what it means. So they haven't been taught, what is this data for? And then how do I use it? Right? And so to them, it is literally just a make work project, that a bunch of numbers that we look at. Okay, I'm in the green. Yay, I'm in the red. No, but I don't know what it means either way. And so they don't know then how to interpret the data and then how to apply it and make strategic decisions accordingly. Those are kind of the most common reasons we see. And it does create a sense of anxiety and pressure for a lot of them, unfortunately. So that answer your question, JB?
Yeah, yes, it does. I think it's, as a former franchisee, before, in my early days, before I actually learned how to be a business owner, not just the operator of my first franchise,
Yep.
it was really the numbers part, because I worked in education. We were supplemental education, and we were just there to help the kids. That's why a lot of times a lot of franchises, not all the time, but we buy businesses as passion projects.
Of
And the
course.
business side of things, right, is not always our number one focus. We just want to help the whoever it might be. And so I think we see a lot of times that's the least interesting part of business ownership to some. But I agree with you, and that is, it's usually just because we've never been taught and we don't understand the why, to your point. So if we talk about scorecard, because I think there's a lot of different interpretations of what a scorecard is,
Absolutely.
and right, and how maybe there are different things that somebody might call a scorecard that we would actually use a different term for. We hear a lot of brands say, "Oh, we've got this amazing dashboard for our franchise. We've got that all covered." Right? Let's talk more about that. Maybe you can start with, what is a clear definition of a scorecard?
Okay. I think I can, there's different definitions out there, to be clear. So it depends on, if you're a brand that's calling a dashboard a scorecard, that's okay. You don't have to change what you call it. Let me be super clear.
Good point.
But typically, scorecard is very selective and intentional as to what KPIs we're picking and choosing. It's built for coaching conversations, and it's often got indicators that we are looking to drive behaviors that lead to success in a franchise operation. And so, while a dashboard might show a lot of information, scorecards drive behaviors for a coach. And not everything that's measurable belongs on a scorecard. It should be very, we typically say no more than 8 to 10 KPIs max. And when you first start with them, I like 3 to 5. If it's a newer entry level franchisee, it is a building foundational block to helping franchisees understand KPIs, how it impacts their business. And when they first start, we almost always start with just leading indicators that lead to future growth, not lagging indicators. And do we need to explain leading and lagging indicators on this?
Yeah, I'm going to ask you about that coming up, so we can
Okay.
hold
So,
that.
yeah, it is really designed to drive behaviors that lead to success, and it's using the numbers that indicate, or that will lead towards those behaviors being successful, that will result in successful outcomes for the franchisee. I hope that makes sense.
Well, it makes sense to me. Hopefully, it makes sense to our audience.
If you have questions, please reach out to us. We're happy to
That's
clarify.
for sure. That's for sure. I think when I was a business owner, early learning about this stuff, I would make the mistake of always looking at KPIs in that dashboard sense. In that, we call it at AC Inc. We call it the KPI tracker,
Right.
which is all of my KPIs that I could think of, and this is what I did as a business owner because I eventually loved it, and now I'm a spreadsheet nerd. I looked at everything for all my different territories. I could tell you every single KPI going. But that I was doing that really in a lagging way, which again, we're going to talk about, but after the fact. Whereas to Brecken's point, this is the key, is those KPIs that are on your scorecard are driving behavior now. And we're looking at them not in, oh, the month's gone, but much more in, okay, we're not hitting our goal for the month. We're not on track. We're not trending toward being on track for our goals. What do we need to do differently? How are we going to drive that, right?
Yeah, and if I could add to that, so scorecards, yeah, it is a visual, weekly, typically, KPI. So usually we go over 13 weeks. We do it by quarter, and you can see each week, are we making the metric or the benchmark that we're aiming for, right? And you've got anywhere from 3 to 10 KPIs, and you can see it tracking across the 13 weeks. It's a digital tool, and you can have different scorecards for different departments, and your scorecards should be changing as your business evolves, right? So eventually you can get to lagging indicators that, for a very high functioning business or a high functioning department, where maybe there's a monthly KPI as well in there. That's fine. But typically they are weekly KPIs for the behaviors that lead towards achieving the goals that we're trying to reach, if that makes sense.
And Brecken, how does that lead to a franchisee feeling ownership over these numbers as opposed to it's just something the franchisor wants me to measure, or it's just numbers they're telling me that I should be hitting? How does it really foster that ownership feeling?
So when it's done properly, and we're building and we're teaching the concept of scorecards, we're doing it with the franchisee, right? So you build the scorecard with them. Okay, guys, let's figure out. You have to understand what's their base knowledge on metrics and KPIs, and then you build accordingly. So if it's someone who's brand new, we're going to start very basic. If they have no idea of what a KPI is, and we explain what KPIs are and why they're important, then we discuss together, okay, which ones are going to drive the behaviors that will lead to your revenue goals, your profit goals, your gross margin goals, whatever they may be, right? So you do it with them. The other thing that really drives ownership is we look at it every time we meet. Right? As a coach, this is not something that we do once and then we put it away. Ideally, your franchisee is filling out the scorecard every week. So on Monday, they're filling it out the previous weeks, or on Friday, they're filling out the whole week, depending on schedules and when things align. So we build a habit of doing it consistently. So that's really big. And then we're also really clear on what expectations look like. So what does a win look like versus what is a loss? So we have clearly defined goals or objectives for each KPI in there. So just for example, networking events attended, right? Often I'll see like I want to attend one a week. Okay, that's fine. So our goal is one. We're tracking it every week. Did I attend one? And we put 1 or 0, and they start seeing patterns. And now as they start seeing patterns over time, and let's say I'm failing in networking and my leads are dropping too, as a coach, I can start asking the obvious questions. Okay, leads are dropping. Why do we think this is? Let's look at a scorecard. What's different? And now so they're seeing the results of their action, and now they're taking ownership because they're seeing where it's impacting. Similarly, okay, I'm winning. Leads are up. Why? My networking events attended has really trended upwards recently. I wonder, wow, okay, and leads are, so they can start seeing the correlation between behavior and results. And so that starts bringing in that sense of ownership for them because they help build it. They are entering the data, they are monitoring it, and as a coach, I'm always asking them, what do you see? Now I'll start teaching them how to interpret the data and how to use it. But at first, I'm really trying to get them to see what are the patterns. And they love it. They start to feel that they are in control of their business because they understand the numbers, they understand why it's important. Sorry, I know I rambled there for a while, but I'll stop there and allow clarifying questions.
Yeah, I have a question. One of the pushbacks that I've experienced back when I was working with franchise systems is that need to automate everything. And be like, oh, we don't need this kind of scorecard because we've got it all automated and we can just pull up the numbers because the argument is our franchisees aren't going to do anything like that. They're not going to take the time to enter in the data as needed, but it's all in the system anyway. So what would your challenge to a franchisor who is saying that? How would you kind of overcome that, or how do you frame that differently so that they get the importance of the franchisee taking that action? Because I'm a big believer in that, in writing it in, that ownership piece. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, a couple of ways. One, you're absolutely right. People learn better when they are inputting the data and not just hearing it or being told it, right? So from an education standpoint, this is a tried and tested true theory. Like if I write it down or I'm entering it, I will have I'm much more likely to retain that information and it will register. 2, every franchise and franchise owner has different strengths and weaknesses. So having a single scorecard that is the same for everybody in all stages on your dashboard that has all the data is not actually going to be helpful for every franchise depending on what stage they're in. Now, if you have customizable dashboards and you're actually taking the time to do that, that can be a version of a scorecard. Absolutely. But you better build it with them. And what we're seeing in systems is that we're working with right now, where we've implemented what we call the Jumpstart programs. They're telling franchisees about this during training, and they start from day one. We are building out a scorecard together. This is what it looks like. This is the numbers we're going to be looking at. What goals do you want to set? And now there's buy-in, and the results long term. Franchisees ramp up so much faster. It's dramatic, the change, and we've got franchisors who will tell you this. So when franchisors say, "Well, we have it," are your franchisees using it?
Right.
Is it helping?
That's
Is
key.
it making an impact? And if it is, great. Okay, let's come in and do minor tweaks if necessary. But generally, the answer I hear is, well, some of them are. Our top performers are,
Yeah.
but our low to mediums usually aren't, and that's where the disconnect is. And so that's where we can make the biggest impact, frankly.
Right.
Because your top performers are usually already into data.
Yeah. A lot of times.
To a,
Not all the time. Not all the time.
But usually there's generally a high percentage of those folks who already understand their numbers and the importance of them.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit more? Because you are, I say this a lot, I feel like from a coaching standpoint, you are definitely one of the best coaches that I know. And well, you're welcome, because I really truly believe that. So how do you, if we use that term, turning data into dialogue, how do you coach a franchisee to the scorecard?
So really good question. So we build it together, right? And there's obviously a little bit of teaching at the beginning, but every week when I see them, and it's every week or every 2 weeks, whatever, I always start with, tell me what you see, right? So Ted Lasso, be curious, right? So the scorecard is not, it's not something that we're using to judge them on. We've created a safe space. Okay. Then I say, tell me what you see. Then I might use questions to say, okay, if they've missed something that is obviously very important, like a pattern that is clearly obvious to me and any other coach, hey, I may point out, what do you see in your closing rate? So I'll use questions rather than me just telling them, hey, your closing rate is dropping. I want them to articulate it, because again, when they say it out loud, it becomes reality to them, as opposed to me just telling them. So that's first, I want them to start identifying the patterns themselves. I will use questions to guide that. And then two, if once we've identified that there's a problem, for example, in closing rates again, okay, it's questions. I don't go into telling them, okay, let's solve your closing rate. I'm going to tell you how to do it. It's, okay, how are we going to solve this? And I do use language like we often. What is our plan? What are the different action steps? And now we can start creating action steps with deadlines, measurables, and accountability, so that next time when we meet, I can say, okay, let's review your action steps. Here's what worked, what didn't, why and why not, right? So it takes longer at first, but as they start to see the patterns, and you start seeing, as you're working with franchisees over that 13-week period, and in 6 months, 9 months later, they come in ready. Hey, I filled out my scorecard. I saw our closing rates dropping by 3.5%. Here are my action plans. This is what I'm already doing. Dun, dun, dun. They get more ready, because people who can self-analyze can now self-plan and self-diagnose. And now they're becoming strategic owners and not just operators. They're using the data to identify areas for improvement. They're implementing plans. And that, as a coach, is our job. Our job is to make them independent, successful business owners. And we have to give them the skills to use that data. And so it's through questions, through concern. Hey, I'm worried I'm seeing this. Guys, what are the impacts if we don't solve this? So it's a lot of open-ended questions like that that generally get their brains rolling. Does that answer your question, JB?
Yeah, and I think if I think back to when I was a franchisee before I became a good business owner, I got myself an independent coach. outside of my franchise system, because it was early days in the franchise world. And she actually was the first one that introduced scorecards to me. And what really resonated is I realized that sure I was doing some things. I paid so much money in pay per click back in the day, Google AdWords, and we would do activities, but it was kind of part of, okay, we're just going to do these things. It wasn't attached to numbers. So when she with me, she said, okay, what's your lead goal? Because everything started with the phone ringing, right, back in the day.
Got it.
And so my certain number of leads. And so the scorecard, every time we met, she would be, okay, are you on pace to hit your goal? Because I think us franchisees do a lot of this. A lot of the time, we're crossing our fingers and we're hoping we're going to get there. And she taught me that, okay, after 2 weeks, you're really down. Like you should be 20 leads up from where you are. What are you going to do differently? Because that's the key, is what are you going to do differently to impact this number so that we're not getting to the end of the month where it's like, oh, didn't hit my goal, darn too bad, and then it's too late because now we're on to the next month or whatever, right? So it was now the action plans, the action step. I had to do something different. Did that mean I was going to spend more money on pay-per-click? Did it mean I was going to get out and pound the pavement and, with a referral coupon, or I was going to go to another event or whatever it means? I had to make that action happen because I needed to get to my lead goal if I wanted to hit my revenue goals. And that was so empowering for me at the time. So I think that kind of is in a nutshell, right? An example of using that scorecard.
Well, that's a great like real life example for sure. I do love like the visual component of the scorecard really helps a lot of our franchisees to see exactly that. Okay, so we've got these 5 KPIs, and a lot of folks, use green or red for color coding if they made their goal or they didn't. And once you get to like week 3 or week 2, patterns are already starting to emerge. Now we have to be a little bit careful about sample size and making sure, it was Christmas break and so everything shows up red. Okay.
Right.
But in general, patterns become very clear, and that's where the coach's job is to ask, okay, we are behind track here on these two. We've got a quarterly goal of X. We're behind Y. What is the plan? And now creating those action steps. So absolutely, JB, what you went through with your coach. But I think as a coach, that is absolutely a big part of my focus. But the second part of it is I want the franchisee to recognize those patterns and create the strategy, because that creates ownership and buy-in. Whereas if I just tell them, you're behind on leads, you got to get out and pound the pavement now and go to 2 more events, buy-in drops dramatically. So that's I really want them to understand it and for them to verbalize it first. Ideally.
Yeah. See, that's good. My coach back in the day was much more of as much as she was teaching me those skills, she was also doing a lot of telling. Like, you got to do this right now.
And that's the traditional consulting method that has been done in coaching, right?
And that worked for me because I was a top performer who was like, yes, okay, and I was fully bought in, and I hired her myself, and so whatever she told me to do, I was going to do. But franchisors out there, if you're thinking how many of your franchisees would be like me, then probably not a huge amount. So
and
getting
there's
their
a
buy-in.
definite resistance
Yeah.
to adding what they think is going to be more work to their plate.
Yeah.
So we have to, once they realize it's important, they will now prioritize it over the shiny gold object that they really want to do. That's fun, but isn't going to impact the business.
Yeah.
So
No.
again, getting them to realize that importance, I think, is a really big part of the coach's job.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any, I gave you a real world example. You have any examples of like things that kind of success stories or something that was a big win for you with a franchisee around scorecards that you can think of?
Oh my gosh, there are so many, JB, honestly. Like, I've got, I'm just thinking of some of our advisors and the brands they work with. Like, they're working with brands that didn't have scorecards anywhere in their system. And now, there's one at the franchisee level. There's one at the leadership team level. There's one just for the sales department. Like, everyone is now using this data, and this is the work of our advisors, getting this into the system, getting buy-in, and it's not a 2-week solution, right? It's a lengthy process of explaining and updating your scorecards. And no scorecard is perfect at first. That's something else I should be very clear on. I mean, when I was running my last company, we probably over the last 5 years had 15 iterations of our scorecard. Like we would change it every 6 months, not everything on it, but updating it, changing the goals, the benchmarks, all those things. But man, I just think of our team right now, and all of them are big proponents of the scorecards. I think all of them have scorecards that are going into systems. We've got one of our advisors who's teaching it for the first time to a brand in 2 weeks, to a cohort of franchisees. It's going to be incredibly impactful for that brand, because some of the top performers have created their own. But imagine we could get a scorecard that all those top performers are now using, and now they can compare data. Like, oh my gosh, it's going to be, yeah. So there are so many success stories. Certainly some of my clients have gone through it, but the biggest ones I think are some of the work our advisors have done. Has been tremendous.
Awesome. So I think, we talk about what a good scorecard is and how we utilize it, but I think still we know, like anything, there's lots of common mistakes that happen with a scorecard. I think maybe now, because I know a common mistake is the difference between the leading and lagging, and people may understand that already, but let's take the opportunity to explain the difference between leading and lagging indicators, and then how that some of the common mistakes play into the leading and lagging, and then any other that you might have.
Okay, let me just gather my thoughts, because there's a lot there. Couple of things. Leading indicators help predict future performance. So, and lagging indicators help predict or give you the results of your performance, frankly. So, for example, net profit, that's a lagging indicator. That comes at the end of everything else. How many networking events I attended in a given month or a week for a new franchisee, that's a leading indicator, because the more events I attend, the more leads I get, the more appointments I get, the more business I'll close, which will result in net profit down the line. So leading indicators drive outcomes, and lagging indicators generally show outcomes, if that makes sense.
Okay, sure does.
In terms of common mistakes, a lot of new people, when they first build their scorecard, they're like net profit, revenue, time off for me, right? So we see these ones, and they are all lagging indicators that come as a result of success, right? Like, hopefully if they're good, but they come at the end of the process. The right scorecards, especially depending on how big your organization is, but if you're a new franchisee, we're going to have very different indicators than a franchisee who's been doing this for 15 years and has a team of 15 employees, right? And so not adjusting your scorecard is another common mistake, or dividing it between different departments. We see folks who have 25 KPIs on their scorecard. It's overwhelming.
Right.
Break it down into chunks. Manageable bite-sized chunks for people is another one I would highly recommend. Using it as a way to judge people. I find people get really nervous about that component. Don't get me wrong, we can use it to measure performance. But often it's used to measure performance, and the goals are wrong, or what we're measuring them on is wrong, and they haven't bought in, so they don't. So there's all these disconnects that can happen, and so this is why it's super important that it's taught foundationally. Why are we doing it? What is its purpose? And then being consistently showing and modeling the behaviors. And when we don't do that, that's where scorecards become just another tool, something that franchisees or your teammates hate.
Yep.
And when it is done right, like, it is incredibly motivational. It can be used, okay, when we hit 10 out of 13 weeks, if we make our goal 5 out of 8 times, guys, we're going to have a pizza and beer party. Whatever it is. Most folks just like, okay, we made our goals. Fist bump. Let's go. Right? Like, you have to celebrate the wins, and that is rarely done, unfortunately. And whatever those wins are for each brand and each team will be different depending on your culture. But I think those are some of the most common mistakes I see. And so leading, lagging, though, is a big one. Oh my gosh, it's so important. And if you're a new franchisee, they should all be leading.
Right.
Everything on your scorecard should be leading indicators.
Yeah, for sure. But if I'm a new coach, and because somebody may be listening right here thinking, they want to use a scorecard, but where do I start? Can you give them some insight as to what are some of their first steps to do this with a franchisee?
So you do need a template, of course. And you have to have some idea as to what are the important KPIs for that franchisee based on their stage and their growth of their operation. And then it's a conversation, figuring out their comfortability with numbers. What is their knowledge base that you are dealing with as a coach? And then you're going to adjust accordingly. So someone who is terrified of numbers doesn't want to look at them. Mm-hmm. We've got to find out and solve that before you can go and build the scorecard together. Right? We've got to get them understanding why, and then what it's for, and then foundationally, don't show them a scorecard with 15 KPIs on it. Start with 3 that they help choose, and they are picking the goals and what's objective. And once they see that they're getting green every week, okay, now we can we make these goals more challenging or more realistic? Because you said 1, but you're getting 8 leads every week. Like, let's again, but you're building on the foundation and you're building success, and you want them to get wins early so that they actually like the scorecard. If you set the goals as too hard in the initial scorecard and they get reds and they fail on everything, they are going to hate the scorecard. So building foundational success, teaching the whys, and then adjusting. Don't just be rigid in stone. If their scorecard is not helping them, it's not driving the behaviors, own it. God, I don't have that conversation. I don't feel this scorecard is getting us where we need to go. Can we talk about this? But again, it's not telling them. You have to have buy-in as a new coach. And so all those foundational steps, teach, apply, refine, or review, refine, do it again. Complete that educational loop. And honestly, I've yet to come across the franchisee that we are doing that who doesn't buy into it after a while, because they start seeing the patterns, they start to feel better, they understand their business, and they put more money in their own pockets.
Right. No, good one. What if we have, just last question, what if we have, whether it's a franchisor, franchisee, coach, at East Inc., scorecards are a big part of what we do. They're pretty much something that we focus on, just because we know the value that they have for franchisees. So what are some of the ways that we can help a franchisor or actually I should say franchisor, coach, franchisee? What are some of the kind of services that we offer that the scorecard comes into play for somebody that works with us?
So at East Inc., we introduce scorecards in a variety of different ways. Often it is done through performance groups or masterminds. So these are groups of franchisees with an AC Inc. facilitator. And it is honestly almost always one of the most popular topics that we get into. And then it's reinforced throughout. So, okay, we build a scorecard together. We show them why everyone builds their scorecards. They come back and share their scorecards with their team. They all feel really good. And then we review their scorecards consistently throughout that program. Show us your metrics. How are you doing? What do you see, and what are you going to do about it? Right? So that's one of the services. The other one is when we're implementing strategic growth coaching. Obviously, for a system, scorecards are a component of what we want the coaches to be looking at with their franchisees as part of our SGC toolbox. It is, I don't think we have a system in place where we would not implement a scorecard or augment or tweak an existing one. And then even bringing it up to the leadership levels as well. I've got brands that now the leadership teams are using their own internal scorecards. So it goes through all aspects of integrating SGC into your system. There's scorecards, I guarantee it, at some point. It may not be the first thing we do, but it will be one of the early things. And then even you can manipulate scorecards for different focuses too. I mean, we have scorecards for evaluating your coaches, right, and their performances. And so there's ones for different departments again. So frankly, it comes in all aspects of the advising and executive coaching stuff that we do, whether it's group coaching, individuals one-on-one with franchisee fractional, or at the exec level where we're implementing SGC. Scorecards are going to be a part of it.
And over in our field coach certification in our education department side,
Yeah.
they teach coaches, anybody who
How
takes
to do this.
field coach. Yeah,
Steph and the team do an amazing job at this. I've seen that module. It is tremendous.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. Okay, well, Brecken, I'm just checking out the time. Unfortunately, our time together has come to an end, but I really appreciate you coming on and talking scorecards. I know it's a topic that you love, and certainly anybody who's listening, if you want to learn more about scorecards or any of the services that AC Inc. offers, please reach out. I am always happy to jump on to a call and just chat about your system, what you're looking for, and see how AC Inc. might help. So thank you again for joining us for the Field Coach Experts podcast, and we will see you next week.